The bell above the cafe door chimed softly, but no one looked up. Morning in Soho always moved like this, half awake, coffee-driven, quietly desperate. Steam rose from espresso machines, mingling with the low murmur of conversations in half a dozen accents. Outside, London hurried past without noticing the small moments that mattered. Behind the counter stood Lena. She tied her apron a little tighter, scanning the queue with the calm focus of someone who had learned patience the hard way. Her movements were precise, almost graceful, hands remembering what her mind no longer needed to think about. Coffee, after all, was a language of its own. "Next, please," she said gently. The man who stepped forward didn't look like anything special. Grey coat. Simple watch. Tired eyes that had seen too many airports and too few nights of real sleep. He placed his phone on the counter, frowning at the screen. "I'm sorry," he said, his accent faint but hard to place. "I think I've made a mistake. My payment app isn't cooperating." Lena leaned closer, her eyes flicking to the display. The app had switched languages, rapidly. English to German. German to Japanese. Then something Cyrillic. The man sighed. "This happens when I travel too much." Without hesitation, Lena spoke softly, first in German. "It's asking you to verify the last transaction." The man blinked. "You speak German?" Before he could finish, she continued in Japanese, tapping the screen lightly. "Now it wants biometric confirmation. It does this when the location changes." A pause. A longer one this time. The people behind him shifted impatiently, but Lena stayed focused. The man watched her now, curiosity replacing frustration. "It's asking for a backup code," he said, this time in French, testing her almost without realizing. "Check your email," Lena replied in fluent French, her tone calm. "The one linked to your business account, not the personal one." His eyebrows lifted, just slightly. She switched again, this time to Spanish, helping him navigate a security warning. Then Mandarin, quietly explaining why the app had flagged his account as high risk. Finally, she returned to English, as if nothing unusual had happened. "There," she said, handing the phone back. "It should work now." The transaction went through instantly. For a moment, the man didn't move. "I've met translators," he said slowly. "And I've met linguists. But this," he gestured vaguely. "This is different." Lena smiled politely. "I just listened carefully." He paid for his coffee and stepped aside, but instead of leaving, he lingered near the window, watching her as she took the next order. Watching how she greeted a confused tourist in Italian. How she reassured an elderly regular in Polish. How she moved through languages the way London moved through streets, without apology. When the rush eased, he returned to the counter. "You're wasted here," he said, not unkindly. Lena met his gaze, something unreadable passing through her eyes. "People say that a lot. And are they wrong?" She wiped the counter slowly. "This job pays the rent. And right now, that's enough." He nodded, as if filing the answer away. "My name is Adrian," he said. "I'm in town for a few days. I run a consulting firm." She raised an eyebrow, amused. "That's vague." He smiled. "It has to be." Outside, a black car had pulled up, discreet but unmistakably expensive. The driver glanced inside the cafe, then at his watch. Adrian followed Lena's gaze, then looked back at her. "Out of curiosity," he said, lowering his voice, "how does someone like you end up memorizing 6 languages just to serve coffee?" Lena hesitated. Just for a second. Then she said, "Because once, not understanding nearly cost me everything." Before he could ask what she meant, the door opened again, and a man in a tailored suit stepped inside, scanning the room with sharp efficiency. His eyes locked onto Adrian, relief flickering across his face. "Sir," the man said quietly, "the board is on standby. They are waiting for your decision." Lena froze. Adrian turned slightly, his expression unchanged, but the air around him seemed to shift. "Tell them 5 minutes," he said. Then, to Lena, "I'd like to hear the rest of that story." She looked at him now, not as a tired traveler, not as a vague consultant, but as someone whose presence suddenly felt heavier, more deliberate. And somewhere between the hum of the espresso machine and the distant sound of traffic, Lena began to realize that this customer was not just passing through her cafe. He was observing her with a focus that went far beyond casual interest. Lena steadied herself, the way she had learned to do years ago, when fear first taught her discipline. She picked up a clean cup, though no one had ordered anything yet, and began polishing it slowly. "You're not what you pretend to be," she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. Adrian smiled faintly. "Neither are you." The man in the suit lingered near the door, pretending to check messages while clearly listening for instructions. Lena noticed everything. The way he stood slightly apart, the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes never left Adrian for more than a second. 5 minutes, Adrian repeated, firmer this time. The man nodded and stepped back outside. The cafe felt smaller once the door closed. "You don't have to explain anything," Adrian said. "I know how uncomfortable sudden truths can be." Lena finally looked directly at him. His eyes weren't arrogant, as she had expected. They were sharp, yes, but layered with restraint, like someone used to carrying responsibility quietly. "You asked how I learned 6 languages, she said. "I didn't do it for coffee." He waited. "I grew up moving," she continued. "Borders, cities, shelters. My mother believed language could save you. That if you understood people, they were less likely to hurt you." "And did it?" Adrian asked. "Sometimes," Lena replied. "Other times, it just helped me understand exactly what I was losing." A group of tourists entered the cafe, laughter trailing behind them. Lena slipped back into motion, taking orders in Italian and English, switching registers with ease. Adrian watched from his seat, untouched coffee cooling in his hands. When the rush passed again, he spoke. "You handle chaos well." "I had practice." He nodded. "So did I." There was a silence, not awkward, but weighted. The kind that came when two people recognized something familiar in each other without fully understanding it. "I don't usually interfere in people's lives," Adrian said carefully. "But occasionally, I notice talent being hidden out of necessity, not choice." Lena's jaw tightened slightly. "This isn't a rescue story." "I wouldn't insult you by offering one," he replied. "Think of it as an option." She laughed softly. "Options are expensive. So is ignorance." Her phone buzzed behind the counter. She glanced at it, her expression shifting almost imperceptibly. Adrian noticed. "Something wrong?" "Just timing," she said. "It always is." Before he could ask more, the cafe door opened again. A woman stepped inside, rain clinging to her coat, eyes scanning until they landed on Lena. Relief crossed her face, followed quickly by worry. "There you are," the woman said, approaching the counter. "I've been calling." Lena stiffened. "Mara, I'm working." "I know," Mara said softly, lowering her voice. "But they moved the meeting." "It's today now." Adrian watched the exchange carefully, his instincts sharpening. "What meeting?" he asked. Lena hesitated again. "Too many hesitations now." "Something from my past," she said. "Something unfinished." Mara glanced at Adrian, assessing him. "Friend." "Customer," Lena replied. Adrian stood. "Adrian." "Mara," the woman said, shaking his hand briefly. Her grip was firm, professional. "If she's told you she's just a barista, she's lying." Lena shot her a warning look. Mara ignored it. She used to negotiate humanitarian corridors between 3 governments who wouldn't even sit in the same room. In 4 languages. Once, 6. Adrian's gaze returned to Lena, slow and deliberate. "That explains a great deal." "That life is over," Lena said sharply. "I chose that." "Did you?" Adrian asked. "Or did someone choose it for you?" The question landed heavier than intended. Lena turned away, her reflection distorted in the steel of the espresso machine. Outside, Adrian's driver approached the window, urgency now unmistakable. Adrian glanced at his watch for the first time. "They are waiting," he said quietly. "Not just the board." Mara frowned. "Waiting for what?" "For someone to decide whether a company worth more than some countries continues as it is," Adrian replied. "Or changes direction entirely." Mara stared. "You're a consultant," Adrian finished smoothly. Lena exhaled slowly. "This is exactly why I don't get involved." "Yet you already are," he said. "You solved my problem without knowing who I was." She met his eyes. "And you walked into my life pretending to be ordinary." "Ordinary is underrated," he said. "But influence finds people whether they want it or not." Mara checked her phone again. "Lena, If we don't go now, the opportunity disappears. Permanently. Adrian looked between them. What opportunity? Lena closed her eyes briefly. To testify. To speak. To correct a narrative that ruined lives. Including mine. And you haven't, Adrian said slowly. Because? Because the last time I spoke, she replied, voice barely above a whisper, someone paid the price. The cafe door swung open once more, colder air rushing in. Two men entered, well-dressed, unfamiliar, eyes already searching. They didn't order. They didn't smile. Adrian's posture shifted subtly, protective without being obvious. Mara noticed too. We need to leave. Lena nodded, removing her apron with shaking hands. Adrian stepped closer. Whatever decision you make, he said, don't make it because you're afraid. Make it because you're ready. She looked at him, really looked at him now, and for the first time wondered if this encounter had been coincidence at all. As they moved toward the door, one of the men blocked their path, his smile thin and rehearsed. Lena Petrova, he said smoothly. We've been looking for you. And in that moment, as London's noise rushed back in around them, Lena realized that the languages she had mastered to survive were about to be tested in a way she had never planned for. Not just to translate words, but to expose intentions. Lena felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the instinct that had once kept her alive in rooms far more dangerous than this cafe doorway. She didn't step back. She stepped forward, just enough. Gentlemen, she said calmly, in English first, then switching seamlessly into Russian, you're blocking a public exit. The man's smile flickered for a fraction of a second. He replied in accented Russian, low and deliberate, we only want a conversation. Mara inhaled sharply. Adrian said nothing, but his presence sharpened, like a blade still in its sheath. Lena continued in Russian, her tone polite but unyielding. Conversations require consent. This does not. One of the men glanced at Adrian, assessing him. This doesn't concern you. Adrian smiled, mild and dangerous. Everything in this room concerns me. The second man leaned closer to Lena. You disappeared when you weren't meant to. Some people would like closure. Closure, Lena echoed, switching to German now, deliberately excluding them. That's an interesting word for coercion. Mara whispered, Lena. Lena raised a hand slightly, just a signal. She turned back to the men, this time in Spanish, slower, clearer, for the benefit of the cafe staff who were now watching nervously. You're drawing attention. You don't want that. The first man's jaw tightened. He answered in English again. 5 minutes. That's all. No, Lena said simply. Outside, a car door slammed. Adrian's driver had stepped closer, phone in hand. Other patrons were beginning to sense something was wrong. The room hummed with uneasy curiosity. Adrian finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying. You have 30 seconds to leave before this becomes expensive. The man laughed softly. And who are you? Adrian didn't answer. He didn't need to. Something passed between the men, recognition, calculation. The second man murmured something in a language Lena recognized immediately. Mandarin. Careless. Arrogant. She responded in the same language, her words sharp and precise. The color drained from his face. You should go, she said in Mandarin. Your employer won't protect you from what follows. That did it. The men stepped aside, retreating without another word, vanishing into the drizzle as quickly as they had appeared. The cafe exhaled collectively. Mara grabbed Lena's arm. We have to move. Now. Adrian followed them outside. The black car waited, engine running. You're coming with us, he said, not a request. Lena hesitated. Old instinct screamed at her not to trust power, no matter how politely it spoke. I'm not asking you to work for me, Adrian added quietly. I'm offering you protection until you decide what you want. And if I decide I want nothing to do with you? Lena asked. He met her gaze. Then I'll still make sure you walk away safely. Rain streaked down the car windows as they pulled into traffic, London blurring past like a half-remembered dream. Mara sat beside Lena, gripping her phone. Adrian sat opposite them, already typing, issuing instructions in clipped, efficient sentences. You have surveillance, Lena said after a moment. I have awareness, Adrian replied. There's a difference. She watched him closely. Those men weren't amateurs. No, he agreed. Which means whatever you're stepping back into matters. Mara turned to Lena. The panel starts in an hour. If you don't show, they'll proceed without your testimony. And if I do show, Lena said quietly, I reopen doors that were closed for a reason. Adrian looked up. Some doors are closed because what's behind them scares people. Silence filled the car again. They stopped near the river, far from the cafe, far from anything familiar. Adrian's phone buzzed. He read the message, then looked at Lena. They know you've resurfaced, he said. Not officially. But they are watching. Who? Mara demanded. Adrian paused. More than one group. Lena felt the weight of it settle in her bones. This is why I left. And yet, Adrian said gently, here you are. She laughed bitterly. You make it sound like destiny. No, he replied. I make it sound like choice. The car door opened. A woman approached, impeccably dressed, eyes sharp, presence commanding. She nodded to Adrian, then looked directly at Lena. Ms. Petrova, she said. We need you inside. They've already begun questioning the timeline. Lena didn't move. Adrian leaned forward. Whatever you decide in the next 5 minutes, he said, will change more than just your life. Lena closed her eyes, memories colliding, rooms without windows, voices arguing over lives like numbers, her mother's belief that language could save you. When she opened them again, her voice was steady. Then let's stop pretending I'm just here to serve coffee. She stepped out into the rain, unaware that somewhere across the city, decisions were already being made in response to hers. Decisions that would ripple quietly but powerfully through rooms she could not yet see. The building loomed ahead, all glass and steel, reflecting the grey London sky back at itself. Lena paused at the entrance, rain cooling her face, grounding her. Inside, movement was controlled, purposeful, people with earpieces, tablets, measured urgency. A different cafe. A different kind of rush. Mara stayed close. Adrian walked slightly ahead now, no longer pretending to be anything other than what he was. The woman who had greeted them spoke rapidly into a headset, doors opening before them without explanation. They've advanced the schedule, she said. Pressure from multiple sides. Lena almost smiled. Pressure was a language she understood well. They were ushered into a waiting room. Minimalist, soundproof, deceptively calm. On one wall, a muted screen showed a panel of suited figures seated behind a long table. Faces she recognized. Others she had hoped never to see again. Her pulse quickened, but her posture didn't change. Adrian leaned closer. Once you step in there, you control the tempo. Don't let them rush you. They'll try, Lena said. They always do, he replied. A man entered, mid-50s, silver hair, eyes sharp with practiced authority. He nodded to Adrian, then turned to Lena. Ms. Petrova, he said. You're late. I'm precisely on time, Lena replied evenly. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. We'll see. The doors opened. The room beyond was larger than it appeared on the screen. The air felt heavier, charged with expectation. Lena walked forward, each step deliberate. She took her seat, folded her hands, and looked up. Let's begin, the chair said. State your name for the record. Lena Petrova, she replied. And before you continue, I'd like clarification on which language you intend to conduct this session in. A pause. The chair exchanged glances with the others. English will suffice. Lena nodded. For you. A subtle shift moved through the room. They started carefully, questions framed as procedure rather than accusation. Dates. Locations. Signatures. Lena answered calmly, precisely, never more than necessary. When they tried to corner her, she slowed down. When they interrupted, she waited until silence reclaimed the room. At one point, a panel member leaned forward. You claim mistranslation altered the outcome of the negotiations. Are you suggesting incompetence? No, Lena said softly. I'm suggesting intent. A murmur followed. She continued, switching briefly into Arabic to quote an exchange verbatim, then into French to correct a misrepresented agreement, then back to English to explain exactly how a single altered word had shifted responsibility and blame. Faces tightened. Pens stopped moving. Adrian watched from the observation room, expression unreadable. He knew this moment. The point where truth stopped being abstract and started becoming dangerous. Why come forward now? Someone asked sharply. After all this time. Lena met his gaze. Because silence was costing more lives than speaking ever did. The room stilled. They pressed harder after that. Motives. Associations. Her disappearance. The cafe. The choice to live quietly. Do you deny stepping away from your responsibilities? The chair demanded. I deny abandoning them, Lena replied. I stepped back because my presence had become a liability to the very people I was trying to protect. You expect us to believe that? I expect you to verify it, she said. Which you already have. A long pause followed. Then the chair exhaled slowly. We'll take a recess. The doors closed again. Lena stood, legs unsteady now that the performance was over. Mara caught her immediately. You did it, she whispered. No, Lena said quietly. I started it. Adrian entered moments later. They didn't expect you to regain control so quickly. They underestimated the value of listening, Lena replied. He smiled faintly. They usually do. A phone buzzed. Adrian glanced at the message, then at Lena. They are pushing back. External pressure. From where? Mara asked. Several places, Adrian said. Some of them close to me. Lena studied him. You're not neutral in this. I never said I was, he replied. But our interests align, for now. She nodded slowly. For now. Another aide appeared. They want you back in 10 minutes. Lena took a breath, centering herself. Then let's not waste it. As they moved again, Adrian lowered his voice. After this, things won't quiet down. Not for you. They never really did, she said. Then you should know, he added. I don't forget people who change outcomes. She glanced at him. And I don't follow people who collect them. He laughed softly. Fair. Inside the room again, the tone had shifted. Less authority. More caution. Lena answered, clarified, corrected. Piece by piece, the narrative she had been buried under began to crack. Outside, across the city, messages moved. Meetings were rescheduled. Alliances adjusted. Names resurfaced. And somewhere, someone who had believed Lena Petrova safely invisible realized she was anything but. Realized far too late that quiet people are often the most dangerous when they decide to speak. The final question came not from the chair, but from a woman who had remained silent throughout the session, her eyes sharp, calculating. If everything you've said is true, she asked slowly, why should we trust you now? Lena didn't answer immediately. She stood. Not in defiance, not in fear, but with a calm that carried weight. You shouldn't trust me, she said. You should trust the records. The timestamps. The original transcripts you buried because they were inconvenient. Trust the lives that were lost when words were twisted to protect power instead of people. She paused, letting the room breathe. I didn't come here for forgiveness. Or recognition. I came because truth doesn't expire just because it's uncomfortable. Silence followed. Not the procedural kind, but the kind that arrives when something irreversible has been said. The chair leaned back, older now, smaller somehow. This session is concluded. The doors opened. Outside, the rain had stopped. London stood washed and watchful, as if it too had been listening. Lena stepped out of the building and felt the air fill her lungs in a way it hadn't for years. Mara squeezed her hand, eyes shining with something dangerously close to hope. You changed everything, Mara said. Lena shook her head. No. I reminded them. Adrian approached more slowly, phone finally silent in his pocket. They've already issued a provisional statement, he said. Independent review. Accountability. Names will follow. And consequences. Lena asked. They always lag behind truth, he replied. But they come. She looked at him then, not as a powerful man, not as a shield, but as someone who had stood beside her when it mattered. So, she said, what happens now, Adrian? He smiled, not the controlled one he wore in boardrooms, but something quieter. Human. Now the world decides what to do with the truth you handed it. And you? She asked. I step back, he said. I do what I should have done years ago, support from the shadows. She considered him. You could have stayed anonymous. Let someone else find me. I could have, he agreed. But leaders don't wait for the right voice to appear. They recognize it when it speaks. They stood there for a moment, two people from vastly different worlds bound by a single choice. Later that evening, Lena returned to the cafe. The bell chimed again, just as it had that morning. Same counter. Same machine. Different air. She tied her apron, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. The regulars smiled. Someone asked for the usual. Life, stubborn and beautiful, continued. Her phone buzzed once. A message. No sender name. Just a single line. The record has been amended. Lena closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt something loosen inside her chest. She moved through the evening easily. Italian for a tourist, Polish for an old man who missed home, English soft and steady for everyone else. Not hiding anymore. Not running. As the cafe emptied and the city dimmed, Adrian passed by once more. He didn't come in. He simply looked through the window, met her eyes, and nodded. A silent agreement. Lena turned back to the counter, wiping it down slowly. The espresso machine hissed softly, like a familiar heartbeat. She understood something now that had taken years to learn. Language hadn't saved her because it made her invisible. It saved her because it gave her the power to be heard, clearly, truthfully, and without fear. Outside, London carried on. Inside, a barista poured coffee. And somewhere between those two worlds, a woman who once translated survival into silence finally translated truth into change.